And this would be a good opportunity to kind of everyone get on the same page, answer any questions that we all have with each other and whatnot. And that's all I have. I'll pass it off to you. If you have anything you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would thank you and Mike for coming to us with this idea, putting this meeting together. I think this is a great idea. I'm imagining this has probably been done before, but not for a while. So, I think this is good to have this constructive conversation, all get together. Hopefully we make it a regular thing.
Well, thank you. So I guess we'll go around just for the public's sake. Everyone go around if we can introduce everybody. So we'll start with this way. We'll start with you.
All right. Michael Feole, School Board Chair.
Michael Flynn, Superintendent.
Jason McLeod, School Board Member.
Jen Thoreau, School Board Vice Chair.
Jamie Carew, School Board.
Brenda Willis, School Board. Karen Rand, School Board.
Jenna Paradise, School Board Secretary.
Jim McGackron, Town Council.
Randall Chase, Town Council.
Jack Webb, Town Council.
David Mills, Town Council.
Aaron Spencer, Town Council Vice Chair.
And Mike Fowler, Town Administrator.
And Charlie Foote, Town Council. I guess we'll hand it off to you, Mike.
Okay, so good evening to everybody. So just to kind of set the stage here, Mike and I have had a number of conversations. We're both new to this particular position. I became the town administrator on July 1, 2025, and I think we've had a great relationship talking about mutual goals for both the town and the school district. And one of the things I think we want to accomplish tonight, this has been done in the past, but on an irregular fashion, but to have an ongoing discussion and talk about some of the things that we already do, maybe that people don't see, some of the things that we already have relationships with members within the school department, and obviously individually here. I know many of you, but not all of you, in some form or fashion personally, and I think it's a great group to get together. We all share the goal of enhancing our town services, our schools, making this community better on a day-to-day basis. So one of the things that I wanted to kick off was just to talk about town goals and where the town council's going, where we see this town going, because obviously we are in the midst of a construction boom. You're seeing infrastructure going on, the likes that we have not seen in Derry's history. We've exit 4A. We still have many years to go on that project. There's going to be continued traffic disruptions. The B contract will last into 2028. We then also are looking at the continuation of the C contract, which will take us eventually over to Route 102 and that intersection with Shanita Road. We also have regional water projects that will enhance our water quality and our ability to push water from basically Manchester all the way down to Plastow. You're also seeing, obviously, the completion of our fire station. That was a great project that just opened up about a month ago. We also have the Abbott Court project, which is roughly it's a parking garage and a $45 million apartment complex, which will serve to enhance the downtown area. That's been a long-standing goal of the town council. There's a myriad of other projects that are in the pipeline. We have Rockingham Road. You're seeing some major construction going on there with a large apartment complex. There's some other projects that we are seeing where some land will be developed. So the picture of where the town is looking at and why you do all these projects is looking at trying to enhance our valuation, our tax revenue. For tax year 2025, our valuation increased by $55 million, and it's looking that projection will also hold again for tax year 2026. So anything that was on our books as of April 1st, 2026 will show up as new valuation on the upcoming tax bill that you would see in 2026. So we're continuing to try to make sure that within our two TIF districts, the one that's the Derry Commerce Chamber and also the Gateway TIF District, we're trying to zone those properties correctly. We're trying to take input from the residents to make sure that we're able to capture some of these goals of building our infrastructure in this community. So I think from the town's perspective, we're no longer the sleepy little town that, is right off of exit 4. We're going to have 2 exits, right? And our population is, getting beyond 34,000 people. And it's something that we're going to continue to see push for people to move into southern New Hampshire from other parts of the country or other parts of the region. And Derry is an attractive place to be. So I think, looking at that synergy between what the town is doing and what also the school district can offer is going to bring, young families. It's going to bring people that, have some things for this community. And looking forward, I think that's where we want to, continue to foster those mutual goals. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there from the town's perspective. I know Mike wanted to talk a little bit about some of the items that are going on and that are exciting in the school district, so I'll pass it over to Mike.
Thank you, Mike. I want to thank the boards for coming together. Again, something Mike and I talked about in September and October. Interestingly, Mike, you say you only started July 1st, but you've been here for multiple years. So starting really on July 1st, getting to know the community and acclimate myself. What I just briefly wanted to speak about, if you haven't been paying attention to our board meetings or some of our short-term goals and long-term goals, but more specifically how we can partner and work together, and that's the predictability of what a school budget can be. We really want to avoid our peaks and valleys of what's been going on, or maybe high one year, low the next, and we want to become predictable year over year. So through the new budgeting process this year, we created more of a predictable process, and I think over the next 3 years, you're going to start to see a more accountability on our side so that the community knows where we're going. We're in the process of developing a short-term 5-year CIP plan with a long-term 10-year CIP plan, and I think that's really where we can incorporate that cooperation with the town so that you can see where, well, let's say for fun, 10 years from now, we have to pave something. You'll be able to see the predictability in our spikes rather than it feels like it comes out of nowhere. We want to be able to communicate that so that you can understand where the dollar that's associated with the school and your tax bill is going. It's important for us. If you wanted to, Mike, I think you put on me specifically what's on our warrant articles this year.
Yeah.
With the budget, our default budget is about $377,000 higher than the proposed budget. Most of our drivers this year were voted on and approved the bond, the teacher's contract, which just shows the support behind the schools. Pinkerton is an increase, healthcare is an increase. But what we want to do now is we have to understand that when larger cost items are coming up, we have to be conscious of what we have going on internally. The second warrant article is we currently have a capital improvement trust. We just haven't really used it on a regular basis, to my understanding. What we're trying to do is take the year-end surplus at a $500,000 rate, which would be no tax increase to the community, and start placing this into the CIP so that, again, we're not having these peaks and valleys when something fails or something is being planned. So that would be, as I've been saying, a savings account. So essentially, we continue to put savings account, and when our CIP plan is released and it's public-facing, you'll specifically be able to see where those monies are going, and those are managed by the trustee of the trust fund, right? So they can only be specifically used for the CIP plan. I think that's important. The next warrant article is the interest we're earning on the bond currently. You're allowed to, I don't know how much you're into the, trying to think of the legal word. You can only earn so much money on interest that you can then reinvest back into the bond projects that are already there. So we're asking for permission from the community to reinvest those back into the bond so that can continue to improve, specifically South Range at this point, as we're starting to see. And then the last is the board had, one of their goals this year was Derry Village that has been sitting vacant now for a year and a half. We formed a committee, did some evaluations. The board voted on and approved the relocation of our offices to Derry Village, and then to put the sale on the warrant article for the current SAU. So those are the things that we're trying to put into the community's hands. More specifically, rather than it going into end-of-year fund balance, they are getting specifically put into funds so that they're reinvested into the property, which I think we can all agree is why we ended up in a position we were with the original bond. So those are some of our short-term, long-term goals with starting in a new role here now 8 months in, but I think we have some pretty good aspirations on how to become more of a partnership with the community.
Wish which is a segue to number 3. And obviously, this is for the board, so if anybody has any questions and wants to provide comments, we want that to be part of this discussion, not just, Mike and I talking through this tonight. But coordination of town and school capital project timing. One of the things I'll be presenting to the planning board tomorrow night will be the 6-year CIP. And so we have a number of major projects. Many of them are covered by grant funds, and sometimes they are, for example, there's $11 million for some water improvements. All of that is going to be covered by New Hampshire DES, so there'd be no cost to the taxpayer. So when you see a large number of maybe, $34 million over the next 6 years or something of that nature, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's all coming from tax proceeds. So we try to be careful about, planning that out so that there's some predictability. And we try to fund about $1.6 million a year of capital improvements, and that could be trucks, it could be apparatus, and we have some ways that we can skillfully put some spread funding. So if it's 5-year, 7-year, just like you would if you were financing a vehicle, we have a way to kind of spread some of those payments out. So that's a process that we're going through. We do try to project out to the 6-year plan, but that tool is always available for, when the school district wants to take a look at that. There may be some windows to say, okay, town maybe is a little bit low in this year. Maybe it's something that they can look at, for long-term planning. So that resource is always available for the public to see, and obviously for planning purposes. So with that, does anybody have any questions or comments that they wanted to put into those first items, 1, 2, or 3?
All right.
Okay. All right. So one of the other topics that we wanted to make sure was on here was talking about legislation. And one of the things that's out there right now is there's a bill that's working its way through about an option for the town to basically absorb the schools, right? So you can talk a little bit about the dynamics of that particular one, right, Charlie?
I don't know much about it, other than I know there's a bill that is up there. I'm not sure. Do you know where it stands right now? Was it heard the committee?
I don't know where it stands. I don't know where it stands with the committee at this point in time. I haven't heard much about it. The way it works, we've got over close to 1,000 bills this year, and unless your committee is actually involved with it, we frequently don't see the details of any of these things until 2 days before we have to vote on it. So and I'm not on that, but trust me, I deliberately stayed away from education funding and education. There's enough hot wires in this town anyway, so that and Social Security. So I'm on Public Works, and Charlie's also on Public Works and Transportation. So I don't know any of the details other than when I first saw the bill, if it's the one we're talking about, we talked about it in our legislative town meeting that I don't believe any of the legislators were in favor of it other than the prime sponsor. I can tell you that.
And I would also add, from the town's perspective, this was not something that the town council had any rule or knowledge of in terms of having this out there as a proposal. Ultimately, if something were to move forward, it would still require local voter referendum, if you will, in the future on that. So we'll continue to monitor that, going forward. But I didn't know if there were any comments from the school board members, if they'd like to chime in.
I'm just wondering if you could clarify, perhaps on your side, maybe more so for the people at home, there is a process in place for this type of situation to happen under our charter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. And just getting a little bit off topic, the one that I think would be just as concerning and also doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere is the reduction to 10 regional SAUs.
Yeah.
I don't think that's from the rumors that we hear. And we just hear, we find out at the same time you guys do when they put the vote up on the wall, where it's going, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere either.
Right, yes, so to answer your question, so yes, there is a process in place, and even if this were to pass the House, this first bill, it doesn't mean it's a one all, done all type thing. the voters of Derry still have the final say in anything moving forward, regardless what happens at the state level. The voters will have something on the ballot if something were to pass at the State House.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the confusion is coming in the
it's just
community.
for, that's the most important part of it. And again, like Council Mill said, I'm not fluent in all the bills up there either, especially that I don't claim that education's my forte. It's clearly not. That's why I'm not on that side. I'm on this side. And that was intentional. But yeah, it's not a one all and done. There is a multi-step process to this. I think from hearing from the original sponsor of that bill, just the intent is that people worry about taxes and tax caps and things like that. So hopefully that's something we can all work together on, like in this manner, not file more legislation and more legislation, more legislation. Let's have open dialogue and whatnot. So, do you have something else?
I'd be curious to hear, I know we had spoken about this to Dave's point at the last legislative couple months back, but the rest of the council, what are your thoughts? Do you guys have an opinion on it? Is it something that would interest you? Is there an appetite from the town to see this through? Just curious, I mean, as part of the, dialogue.
So I'll go first. So personally, it's not something I was, eager to do. Again, I believe it's up to the will of the people. If the people want that, then I have no problem with it. But it's not like that's not my personal mission to go do that. But if the people of this town say this is what we want, then by all means I would honor that 1,000,000%. But I think that the best approach right now is like I said, with what we're doing right now, have an open, honest communication, dialogue, and try to future planning collaboratively, collectively, so people at home don't get hit in the wallet all at one lump sum 1 year and then have a 5-year reprieve and then bam, hit again. I think we just need to have slow, steady progression, whatever that looks like. And when you and I first met Mr. Flynn at the candidate forum that you had, the candidate meet and greet, you asked me about the CI plan and how often the town and the school meet, and I'm like, oh, we really don't.
Yeah.
And I was very refreshed to hear that, because it's very important, because you guys have projects you want to do, we have projects we want to do. At the end of the day, it comes out of the same wallet of the people at home. They don't care where that dollar goes. They just know that dollar's going out of their wallet. Yep. So we need to work together to make sure that's spent wisely and appropriately and not irresponsibly. So whatever that looks like, that's what I'm in favor of. So
Yeah, I think if we can make sure that, we're communicating and we're coordinating, these types of projects, and I think, the way that Mike is going to be approaching budgeting from now on, the way that we're going to be approaching budgeting, and, trying to make those increases, more standardized, that you're not seeing these, peaks and valleys.
right.
I would tend to agree with Charlie. It's not something, I think that often in our New Hampshire legislature, there's a knee-jerk reaction to something, and one person has a feeling about something and wants to go do it, and I think there are, sometimes we need to take a step back, and I think the school board is kind of looking at things a little differently. We're looking at this as not adopted. I don't have an appetite for that bill at all. Same as Charlie said, though, if that's what the voters said, sure, I'm not going to go fight it, but I don't personally think that that's the way we need to be going right now at all.
I said since day one I didn't support it the way it was written.
I think I have concerns about it in that it would force us to change our current form of government, and would force Derry to either go back to traditional town town meeting, school district meeting, or it was city. And if people wanted to change the charter and go to a city and then petition the legislature to bring the school district under the city, that would be one thing. That would be the will of the voters. But this is an ass-backwards approach. And again, my concern is if it passes, it would force our hands to change the form of government, which I think works well for this community.
So I'm going to agree with a portion of what Jack said. Should the legislation pass, it will force the hand of the town to either go back to town meetings and then the school district meeting, it'll still be under one thing, or become a city. That is concerning to me because we just did the school district meeting with, 90 people in it? Plus or minus, I gotta be within 3 and 4, right? I gotta be within a half a dozen, for $113 million, right? I think the town's been working very efficiently with the tax cap. Maybe the only two people sitting here, Brenda and I, are the ones that were still on these boards back in the 90s when that passed. And what everybody else says is right. I mean, if it's the will of the people to do this, then you need to make a decision to either become a city or not. I mean, that to me is the question. The ultimate question is, do you become a city or not? I personally do not want to go back to any level of the old town meeting on a Saturday, come in and do it. That would throw in all the questions about tax caps and everything else. And I think what we have currently works very well on the town side. This legislation would force the hand to become a city. Again, if the people want it, great. I don't have any problem with it. But the previous questions, a lot of what we're doing here tonight has happened before, and there's, I think, the right way to go about it, and I'll refer back to Ms. Willis, because we did it back in the late 90s, the strategic planning group, and at that point, I was responsible for coming up with a 20-year capital improvement plan that included the towns, the city, the town and the schools. We literally laid out a 20-year capital improvement plan. That was all part of the growth management ordinance. David, you'll remember that too, because I think you were on the committee also, where we developed a 20-year plan that literally set in motion what the tax rates would be and all the major projects, and specifically working on getting West Runningbrook passed that particular year, and timing in additions to the police station and doing things at the transfer station. That happened late 90s?
I was on committee board, but not on the school board.
Yeah, late to mid 90s we did all that. So this is kind of going back to where we were before, where there was a joint cooperative effort, and I know it took, probably took me about 6 months to sit down with everybody. That was back in the days of David Jack and sitting with numbers and making sure that we timed when we did additions to school buildings versus when we did things to town buildings. And it tended to, it was really a blueprint. You didn't have to do it, but if you followed it, here's how things were going to materialize. So I think this is a good start to going back to that and trying to come up with, and it didn't get in the vehicles and things of that nature, because there's certain ways of handling. I'm talking the major capital improvements, right? And we should do that again and sit down. We actually had Pinkerton at the table back then,
I was just going to say that we had Pinkerton.
So Pinkerton was I met with Pinkerton, I met with the school district and the town, and literally sat at home on a computer and figured out where everything would go over 20 years and presented it to all three boards, and we agreed, for the most part, that 20-year plan was pretty damn close to happening. I think the only thing, the police and fire station didn't happen in the right order.
Change of government.
Change of government changed, and some people didn't follow the plan, but probably for a good 10 or 12 years, that plan was followed, and we kind of had a fairly, taxes went up, but it was at a fairly predictable, stable rate for people.
Was Pinkerton invited to this?
No, so Mike and I thought it would just be mostly just us talking here amongst as a kind of an opening step.
I mean, it'd be nice, I get disappointed in that, I have reached out at the last Pinkerton, what is it called?
Sending town meeting.
Thank you, sending towns meeting. And we mentioned that we had a legislation meeting coming up, and it'd be really nice if they could send somebody, and it's just disheartening to not have them come and join the conversation when they are so large a part of the conversation. And I'm not saying, not inviting him here because I don't know that anybody would have showed, but it would be really nice to have one of the biggest investors and the biggest costs
Right.
come to these meetings and be part of it. They live on an island, and
I do want to point, just in fairness to Pinkerton, they have been invited to legislative committee meetings. The last one, they were not, and that was on me. They were left off, so. They did not know there was a meeting last time.
They've come.
They have come, okay.
They have been legislative, but this, we figured we'd keep it short, small
I'd
to begin.
I'd like to finish up answering Jason's question, because we kind of got a little bit off track. Like everybody said, as far as legislation in the town, if it was the will of the people, we might have to entertain it. But I can tell you this, and Charlie's probably the same way, I get over 300 emails a day on legislation. People telling me, I got one from you, it's on one of the bills, saying, oh, by the way, you probably just filled out a form. Yeah, I get 300 emails a day telling me yes or no and stuff like that, and I can tell you my all-time count on this bill that we're talking about is at the high of 0. I have heard nobody talk about it at all. Nobody, not a single one. And usually I get emails about dogs barking, things like that. So I don't think this is going to rise to a level of importance that we have to worry about.
I think the initial intent was to kind of what we're doing here. That legislation that was put in, I believe, was to say, people are, they believe in education, but they also got to live here and pay their bills, and we have elderly citizens who are on fixed incomes and whatnot, people who aren't elderly but just have lower paying jobs that are trying to stay here. So I think, we need to kind of take that all into consideration. So I think that was the initial intent of the bill. I don't want to speak for the sponsor, but I think that's what it is. And but I think that, again, like I said earlier, we can all take this forward. And I think, Mr. Flynn, when we met over the summer, when he first came here, I think I said to you, this problem wasn't created overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. And you being new, you're going to have broad shoulders because you have a lot of stuff to carry over the next, get this all figured out and have I'm not saying that in the next year this problem's going to be fixed, but it needs to be a game plan. And it sounds like you've already established that game plan, the 5-year, the 10-year, and all that. So, and I think if we can demonstrate that we're showing good faith effort and trying to reel things in on townwide, both sides, then I think that's what people want to see and want to hear.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you look at any legislation, whether it's dogs barking or whatever it may be, it's really because someone feels like there's a better solution that maybe not has been talked about. I just want to continue to emphasize our role as the school. We always carry the heaviest tax burden. That's a fact in New Hampshire. It's not going away anytime soon. But if we can communicate and show the community and build some trust on what we're doing with the value of their dollar, then that doubt doesn't creep in. And that's really our job. We have to get our house in order before we can start doing other things. And, I appreciate the can't fix it overnight comment, because I've been saying I've been here for 8 months. And it's, to me, in Hopkinton, the work that I did to reduce their surplus and their fund balance and the predictability took about 3 years, right? And so if I can continue to show the community that we're not, quote unquote, over budgeting, and that number continues to come in where the municipality budget should be with surplus and fund balance, then people begin to develop the trust when I'm saying, if I'm going to ask for $5, I want to spend $5. I'm not asking for 10 to only spend 5. Like, there's a real goal to make sure they know where all their money's accounted for and associated with. So, I think that we have all been on the same page this year as a group, and I think it's shown through the budgeting process that we started early on, and I look forward to continuing to prove to the community and developing that trust. So.
Charlie, can I just go back to what Jim was saying before? When we built Barca, it was the same thing. We met with the town, we met with Pinkerton, we talked about who was building what. Pinkerton held off on a building to help us get what we needed for our children, because we had 34 portables and numerous trailers the kids were being educated in, and they were falling apart. So same thing with the fire station. There was a slowdown of the ramp up of the fire station to help the school district. And people forget those things that did happen, but they happened at a table like this. We worked together to make it all happen for everyone in the town.
Right. And also, Jen, you mentioned earlier, so the legislative committee, I mean, we reinstituted that, 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
About that.
And for this at a smaller scale, but for those at home who don't know, the 3 representatives, 3 town councilors, 3 school board members, Senator Birdsell, and member of Pinkerton. And this is all to try to, any legislation that's coming up, or any legislation that we think needs to be put in or whatnot, that's a good opportunity, and that is open to the public. So anybody can attend those meetings. It's not always in this room, sometimes on the second floor, but it is open, it's published, it's always advertised.
It's tomorrow night in the back room?
So there's one tomorrow night on the 3rd floor, the room right adjacent to us. So if anyone's interested, they're able to come to that as well. Erin is the chair of that, and she can field any questions on that from people at home. But, so, anyways, moving on. State funding.
Okay, sure. So, state funding, I wanted to put in a discussion from the town side. We get a myriad of different state funds. Sometimes they're one-time funds, sometimes they're grant funds from blockade, gasoline taxes. We've heard a lot about downshifting a lot of the cost, retirement, and all of that over the course of the year from the state. Right now, from the town's perspective, we seem to be pretty stable. I'm not seeing any major issues that we have to be concerned about as far as state funding in terms of looking at our revenues. I know there was a bill, I think it was HB 1474, I've been monitoring, about rooms and meals taxes, and so there was a redistribution formula that had it moved forward. Derry was going to benefit potentially about $1 million a year to the good, taking away from some of maybe the more property-rich towns on the seacoast and things of that nature. But I think they fought that pretty hard, and it looks like that was voted as ITL, so 1701. It looks like that bill is not going anywhere, but we still are going to see the guaranteed number that we had from the previous year. Maybe it goes up a little bit, but from a town revenue standpoint from the state, pretty much everything looks to be pretty stable, and I wanted to kind of serve as a platform to see where you guys were on the school side and talk about any weaknesses or any concerns or stability that you have that you know about.
I mean, state funding is always a huge topic in the school world in New Hampshire. And I mean, obviously from our perspective, when you look at the adequacy of the combined aid that we receive from the state, and I mean, this is every district in New Hampshire, it's not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So, every year when we're, receiving less relative to inflation from the state, that's our primary source of revenue other than local taxation. The school district doesn't make money. We have very limited revenue sources outside of local taxation and state aid. So, when you look at the numbers, a lot of it is based on enrollment. We receive everything with adequacy is per pupil, but that per pupil number that we're receiving, it's not keeping up with inflation.
Any comments from the body?
We also have to compete with the rise of EFAs, and even though it's not a large amount, it's something that's going to start chipping, I think, away at what we are going to receive if those numbers go up. And it makes it hard to predict what the numbers go in for Pinkerton when we don't know necessarily where the kids are coming from K-8 into the high school years. But it's not a large amount, but it's just something to contend with.
Now, going back to what Jen just talked, do you expect to see more students wanting to come into Derry or more students wanting to leave Derry based on these EFAs?
I think the challenge that we kind of hit us hard this year was students showing up to Pinkerton as freshmen, but were accessing the EFAs K through 8. So whether they were homeschooling or alternative education, however it may be, once they kick in as a freshman, they are enrolling in Pinkerton. So when you talk about formula and funding, tied to average daily membership with students that are showing up. Another thing that happened this year, which I think is a positive for the community, is less people qualified for free and reduced. So more people, either jobs are kicking back in, the economy's kicking back in, they don't meet that threshold, but when we lose free and reduced, we lose money that's dedicated to us. So it's one of those odd things where it's like, no, this is great. People are moving out of that poverty level. At the same time, now you're losing adequacy, and you have to make up on that side of the ball. So the EFA tied directly to K-8, I think in this community, we're going to see it tied to the enrollment in Pinkerton. That's going to be the challenge.
What else?
Okay, so the next item on our agenda was to talk about collective purchasing opportunities. So this isn't a particularly, great topic to talk about. We've been doing this for years, right? It's been something that is coordinating with Jane in particular and Jeremy. In my role as the Public Works Director for 20-plus years, we always had a really strong relationship with the school district in terms of anything that they needed for service. For example, we instituted cooperative electrical purchasing. So the school district, for probably now about 15 years at a minimum, has not paid the Eversource rate, which there's been a significant gap between what we could buy it for. And it was a collective process where we took all the town buildings, let's say it was 4 million kilowatt hours per year, put it with the school district, and we put it into one large contract, which saved, it could be $50,000, could be $100,000 per year. That has been a great savings as we've gone along. We do the same thing with natural gas. That's been a great program for us as well. A lot of times, too, with some of the contractors that we had access to through the Department of Public Works, we were able to work with them. If there was a paving project, I remember there was something where we put them into contact with our contractor, and they were able to get the same prices that the town does. So I think a lot of that stuff doesn't get to be seen out in the public light, so I felt it was, very, very appropriate to put out there that there's always been a really strong bond relationship. Jane, Jeremy, anybody else in the school district that had a question or a concern that was maybe infrastructure, public works related, we've always had a great flow of information. I remember when some of the energy enhancements were done at certain schools, maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, we had a role in reaching out and facilitating a lot of rebates that the school district received for some of the items that we did for natural gas. So those schools were either on, I think they were oil, and they were costing a lot of money. Putting in the natural gas, there was some immediate savings once some of the boilers were converted over. So just again, for the public's knowledge, there always has been a really strong basis of shared services where possible, where feasible, and we'd like to continue that as we move forward. I mean, obviously, some of the towns' load for electricity is going on the new solar panel at the landfill. And that'll be coming online somewhere around April 1st. So we'll see a different rate, but I've already worked it out with a successor contract through the school district on both the natural gas and also the electrical. So we'll continue to coordinate in those areas, and I think that's just a positive item for us.
Salt as well?
Yep, salt, yep. That's another thing where, if the school district were to go out and buy on their own, it would have been, much more expensive. You have a smaller use. We just charge what we get charged, which is, probably 20 to 30% less than what's there. So we've always had a great partnership on that front, and we will continue to do that, going forward. Any other questions on that? Okay. All right. One other item I wanted to put out there for, it's been a topic that's been out in the public about how the town collects taxes, okay, and how it distributes it to the school district. So the way this works is everybody in Derry receives a single tax bill, and it's generally due in December and June of each calendar year. So twice a year, everybody receives their tax bill. It's a single bill. It has 4 components: town, school, county, and then state education. So those 4 components come in. And ultimately, all 4 of them have a different designated purpose. So essentially what happens for the school district money in particular, all that money is deposited in, and let's just say in a year, about $72 million, I think, is distributed to the school district from the tax proceeds. I think that's net of all your other revenues and whatnot. And that's held in the town's coffers. And what happens is each year, Mark Fleischer, who's the CFO sitting behind you, and Jane Samard work out a distribution schedule to meet the district needs And ultimately, there's, I think, an enhanced payment that comes in October so that the Pinkerton tuition can be paid. So some mechanism like that, but let's just assume it's about $5.5 million per month that's distributed, and those payments are just intergovernmental payments from town to the school. Now, the philosophy that the town takes the interest revenue, I guess, is somewhat true, right? We have the money, it sits in our coffers. If we were to distribute that to the school district on July 1 and January 1, you would have that here. But I think the other side of the coin, looking at it from the town's perspective, is we serve as the agent and collect all of that money. So we have, service agents, we print the tax bills. We also cover, so say, for example, people aren't able to afford their tax bills, we have what's called overlay, where we would make the school district whole. So let's just say 10% of our taxpayers were ineligible to pay for some, reason, and they went into lien, and it was a difficult situation. The town is still going to have the resources through its fund balance to cover what the school district needs are. So I think it's important to kind of put out that question of, sure, that comment has some merit, but then I think it's also important to note that, that's not done in any other school sitting that I'm aware of. We did some research on that, where the town itself is the governmental unit that accepts the taxes. It has all the infrastructure for its tax collector, its tax bills, its assessing. It's all centralized here. And then those resources are distributed to the school district. So, I don't know that there's a model that, in talking to just our town council, that we'd be interested at this point in sending those proceeds over on day one that's there. But as I said to Mike, I said, if it's a school board initiative to look at maybe how the payments are distributed for a specific need, certainly reach out to us on that front. But again, I think any model where it's, we receive it on June 30th, the tax bills are due, and the school district gets all of its half, the $36 million, on July 1. I don't see that being something that the town council supports. But understanding, too, that we have costs to collect all that money, to print the bills, to take it in, and cover when we're not fully receiving all of our tax proceeds. So I just wanted to put that out there as a general topic, because I just want to make sure that the public hears the town council side of this. Did I miss any?
And just that the town has the capability for payment plans for those people who are falling behind the taxes.
Right.
And also liens, right, and taking the property directly.
Right.
So, which is a process. It's not like an overnight thing. You miss your taxes one day and then we take your house. But there is a process for that RSA allows for that to happen.
Right. And I think it also would be, inefficient if there were two separate taxing agencies. If the school district, were to look at this in the prism of, well, we want our own, operations to go and collect taxes, that would mean hiring people and doing some other items. When you do that, that's kind of counter to any of the efficiencies we've been talking about here. So, as we see it, at least on this side of the aisle, this is probably the best that, we're doing at this point, is for us to be the collector and then to distribute that. We'd never want to put the school district in a situation where they don't have adequate funding for their, monthly payroll and needs. So if that needs to be addressed, we can talk about it. But in terms of getting that day one payment, I'm not sure we're there at that point. So that was just the reason for that.
And I'm thinking other communities do it that way, right?
Nobody does.
I think we're the only.
No, everybody does
Right.
it as we do. All
We
100
did some investigation, and if indeed the school board the school side took it over and sent out their own tax bills and did all the work and everything else, the town would not be liable to fund anybody that didn't pay their taxes.
Those last 2 points made are the most critical ones, I think, when you think about what you guys just said about people can't pay their taxes, the town still makes the school whole, and then the administrative costs of just having to
Pick it all up.
It's already in place. It's inefficient to start a whole new process and have one run in parallel that basically does the exact same thing. The mechanism is already there.
Then people would get two different tax bills.
Two different tax bills.
You'd be your own taxing authority.
I'd be
We
interested.
wouldn't do it.
Sorry. I'd be interested, though, in finding out what the difference is. And you said that, it's held in your coffers. So it's accruing interest in whatever it is. And it's not, I don't want to pick apart your money versus our money, because obviously, at the end of the day, it's a pool of dairy in the community. But where you have an opportunity, and the town has an opportunity to earn revenue, the school does not earn revenue in any large capacity. So anything we're able to put into, into funding, into PDIP and whatever, and gain interest, that is something that we have to ourselves. So I kind of likened it to, if I were saving for my child at a 529 and I distributed and there was, interest left over, I wouldn't be keeping the interest for myself. I would still be giving it to my child for the 529 for the college account. So having a breakdown, and not to say that we want to take over the billing, and not to say that, because obviously if the bill goes out once, you're already billing anyway, regardless of what's on the bill or the taxes are coming in. But I would personally be interested to know, what would we be looking at on this interest rate? What is the breakdown of the interest earned? If it's a matter of a couple of, $1,000, then it probably isn't something worth pursuing. But if it's larger than that, then that is something that I would think should go to the school system.
Well, part of that money that is collected, don't forget, pays for the people that don't pay their taxes. We still have to make the school board whole, the school system whole. So any of that revenue that we're getting in
How often does that happen, though? Like, is it?
Constantly.
A lot more than you think.
Regularly.
A lot more than you think.
Yeah, so that's the big trade-off. If you're doing it, then you don't just get to take the interest. You have to make up the money that people don't pay their taxes on. Right now, we make you whole, and that's part of the way we could offset it.
Right.
We also have a whole section of town called the tax collector department.
Yeah.
We will be reviewing their, and that interest helps offset the cost of collecting taxes. Yeah, I'll keep it as simple as that.
I think also on that too, that would become an accounting nightmare, where if you're having the school taxes paid and the town taxes paid separately, and they default on one and not the other, what do you do now with their home? You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, yeah.
So that's very informative.
And the school doesn't have the ability to put liens on those houses, like I said
Correct.
earlier.
I wanna
The town
say
has
that,
that
right?
ability, the school system would not. And I think, and to the point, so some of the taxes, sometimes, yes, it's literally a couple $1,000s sometimes. Sometimes it's tens of thousands of dollars. And over years, over a period of years, so those, that $10,000 is now in the, multiple digits
Yeah.
for thousands of dollars. So that, the town has to figure out how to rectify that situation, which we do. We do the meet regularly on that. We have, non-publics in that, and the tax collector will come up, Stacy will come up, and she'll do just did it not too long ago on it, and we,
Pretty month, a bi-monthly
Yeah.
thing.
so.
There's a list.
So before we move on to the last item, where it's just open discussion, I think I'll close this discussion on the tax side of it with the perspective of looking at the broader. Right now, interest rates are fairly favorable. They're somewhere just under 4%, somewhere 3.8% that the town takes in, and it depends on, where you get that from. But we've seen economic cycles where we've had interest rates that have been under 1% that we've taken proceeds in. So those revenues do fluctuate. And then the other side of the coin is we've also seen property distress where people have struggled to pay their taxes on time because of, national economic issues. So I think to look at that, just to put that in a broader perspective, just wanted to cap that off, that, we may be in one place in 2026, but that might not be the same way we are in 2028. Less, more favorably, who knows? But that's kind of all I wanted to bring up on that. And then finally, we probably have about 5 minutes here, but just looking at if there's any other discussion from the members, it probably is the time for an open discussion.
You guys.
I'll just say, to circle back to the point about HB 1331, I think it's really important for the community to understand that our Pinkerton tuition is about 30% of our budget. And so if there was ever any talk of operating under a tax cap under the school side, that would be affecting K-8. And it would really prevent us from being able to provide the necessary services that we are required to by law on that side of things. And so I think it's important for people to understand that at home. When talk about tax caps get brought up, it's a lot more dynamic than that. So I think that's important to understand.
Pinkerton is just one of the expenses that, we have to provide these services. Special education is another one that is very expensive and very unpredictable, and those services have to be provided. So, if you were operating under a tax cap of 3% or whatever it may be, when you have Pinkerton tuition come in at 5%, when you have very high special education costs, you're going to have to make up for that somewhere, and that's going to affect the services that we're able to deliver to kids.
Right.
Just a couple of things. Follow up with your special education thing. I view it as a great lead balloon that's looming over budgets, and that it could affect, taxpayers here in Derry, because I don't see at the federal level and even at the state level that being funded adequately when it costs, because I have a friend who's going through this right now, $60,000 on some kids. That's a huge thing that affects budget. And just from a planning standpoint, and as a taxpayer, I just worry about support for that section coming from federal and state. An area that's not talked a lot about, neither municipal or school budgets, it doesn't necessarily have to be part of the budget, was part of the executive fire officer paper I wrote, and that had to do on a disaster funding plan. And I don't mean natural disasters and stuff. Unfortunately, when you look at school shootings and violent actions that occur in municipalities, a lot of times that causes partial or complete shutdown of schools and buildings, sometimes for the life of that building. Columbine, to use an example, required a demolition and remodel of a large section of that. And that is an area that I think from a taxing standpoint and from a cooperative standpoint, that we may not have to set funding aside for it, but I think that there has to be a definitive plan that if an event like that were to happen, I can see parents not wanting to send their kids into a certain area forever. And what is the plans, whether it's education or other things that need to be done. And I think the town, from a public safety standpoint, is doing a very good job and has been for about 15 years going back on both fire and police side, because I've been intimately involved in that. So you've done that planning. But just like we plan for ice storms for these things, I think there has to be some planning on, from a capital standpoint, what happens if we have, violent action in one of our schools or municipal buildings. And it has happened in New Hampshire at the municipal level. How is it going to affect people wanting to use that structure? That structure could become itself a piece of evidence and shut down for months. So I know it's not something that people want to talk about, but I think from a financial planning perspective, I think we do need to think about it. Thank you.
I think, and I'll have to look into it, because I think the state has a fund in effect already for that. Yeah. I remember voting on it a couple of years ago, that it was specifically just for disasters that were totally unplanned, and it didn't specify that it had to be a school or anything like that. It could just be that we live next to a cliff, and the cliff fell down on us, and who budgets for that? So the state, the bill was we put a little fund together that anybody needs it, and hopefully, nobody ever does. So I'd have to look back, find out whether that passed or not. But we might already have funding for that.
The school district also works closely with Homeland Security, the fire and police department, and those plans aren't public because they shouldn't be.
Those are operational plans, but I'm thinking more of the fiscal plan, so that you could have a school shut down, or a portion of the school shut down for months, because that's what typically happens. And how's that infrastructure going to be paid for? Yeah, there may be disaster, which was news to me, maybe disaster funds available from the state, but that's still a process. And I think, as you have just mentioned, I think through Homeland Security and other things, there's some very good operational plans out there. I think as administrators, when it comes to incident management, you also have to look at financial plan.
Jack, there has, and I'm not going to elaborate on it, but there has been a lot done to our school buildings with the help of the Derry Fire and Police Department, as well as Homeland Security. And again, I'm not going to go into it, but you should ask about them if you really, and you probably know as a fireman a lot of the things that were done.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
I see what you're saying. I would actually, I would think that maybe talk to other towns and other town councils and see if they have looked into this and put something like this into place, and how exactly they go out about doing it, because it's like anything else, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Right.
But I understand the point that you're making, because if, a whole school gets shut down for X amount of time, where do the kids go? I get your point. And I'm guessing mostly we jump to remote for X amount of time, but that's a different story for another day. But I see what you're saying. I would say look into it with other towns.
Right. Anybody else? Can you just elaborate for the people at home, because we have a different audience sometimes, about the special ed funding? And so in Derry, so you have a special education child, you have to pay 400%, right? You have to send them out of district sometimes and whatnot. Can you just 30-second clip on that, if you're able to do that or not?
30 seconds?
39 seconds. You have 39 seconds.
We could have spent the whole hour.
The short version of special education funding right now is it's a different formula than we talked about before with adequacy. So each regular ed student gets a certain amount of money, $3,700, whatever it might be, and then if the student is identified on an individual educational plan in IEP, there's another portion of funding that goes. But then you talk about what was kind of brought up, if, let's say the student needs high medical needs, right, and our school can't provide it, then they might be in out-of-district placement. That could cost upwards of $75,000, $80,000. And then the formula in which the state reimburses you is never 100%. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge, honestly, that we're facing in our profession right now is the funding of special education to its fullest, because if you looked at our pie charts and you take the time and we have a special education info doc on the website, that tells you the formula in which is really laying heavy on the local taxpayer, because we have a 22% roughly special education population that's driving a large number. This year we went up $900,000 alone, and we have to provide those services, right? That is the law. It is a legal document that you have to provide those services. So is that quick enough?
That's
okay.
That's exactly what I wanted to.
And of course, from the funding perspective, when IDEA first came into play 50 years ago, the federal government was supposed to pay 40% of the costs, and that's obviously never happened. But that's just one of the funding issues that every school district has to deal with.
Right. Anybody else? Anything?
And on a positive note, I just again want to say that we're not going to solve all the world's problems tonight, but I do think that this is a great start, even if it's low level. Low level continues to build, right, to more in-depth, robust conversations. And I hope that maybe it becomes a quarterly thing at some point, right? So specifically before budget season, sometime September, October, as we get into our warrant articles would be great, and then maybe a wrap-up. I mean, if anyone wants to meet in the summer, that's up to you, but I think that'd be the thought. So.
And just to keep the lines of communication open all year round, with us and with the two mics here and everyone.
No, and I think we established that initially when we first spoke about this, and the open line of communication. And I think, again, it's for the people at home. It's for them. Like, they're the taxpayers. They're the ultimate, they're the bosses of everything. So we need to be accountable to them and work together on it. So I think this is great going forward. And tomorrow's the legislative committee meeting, right?
Yep.
7 o'clock.
So
7 back here.
And again, that's open to anybody and everybody. And if you have things, they can send it to you if it's on the agenda or something like that, right? If someone from the public has a question about that legislatively or not, they can reach out to you or any of us, and we can point them in the right direction as far as that goes. But anyone else have anything?
Motion to adjourn.
No?
Thank you.
All right, motion adjourned. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. The Derry Town Council meeting for Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. If Council Spencer will lead us in the pledge. Thank you. All right, so welcome. If event of an emergency, exits in the back of the room there. If you need assistance, Chief Feole will be glad to help you. And we shall do a roll call. Councilor Mills.
Good evening.
Councilor Webb.
Hello.
Councilor Spencer.
Good evening.
Councilor Chase.
Good evening.
Councilor McEachern.
Evening.
And good evening from the chair.
Motion to open the public forum.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on public forum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Public forum is now open. If you wish to speak, come up and state your name and address for the record. And pay attention to the lights for your time. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me? There we go.
Yes.
My name is David Provencher, 26 Milty Moore Road, Derry, New Hampshire. I am a frequent visitor to the Hood Plaza that has the Shaws and the Rhapsody and all that over there. And I have noticed that that building is a little falling apart and there's a lot of empty units. And I was just wondering what, if any, legislative pressure you could push on the owners of that building to give it a little bit more upkeep than it's been getting. There's, water damage all over the place on the exterior. There's falling panels. It's dangerous to the customers and the business owners of the people that are renting space there. I'm sure they pay lots of money in rent and they're not getting a wonderful building there. And every time a new business comes to Derry, they want to build a new building, and there's empty units all through that plaza that could be being filled up by small businesses here in Derry. And the fact that they aren't says to me that we need to be applying pressure to the owners of that building to lower their rents or improve their usage. All right, that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Well, the town administrator will look into code enforcement, see if there's anything that's worthwhile for them to look at.
Oh, actually, one more thing. There's also a lot of false fire alarms that got called on that building. And I'm sure you could talk to the fire department about how often they get called out there to hear a false alarm because, their alarm system isn't up to date or whatever.
Okay.
Apparently they've been hit with a bunch of fines, but they just never bother fixing it because fixing it's more expensive than the fine.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for real this time.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Seeing no one jumping to the forefront, no
Mr.
one
Chair,
looking at
seeing
me
none,
like
rise
no one's
online.
online, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close public forum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public forum is now closed. Consent agenda 26-07, approved non-public minutes, February 3rd, 2026. Those minutes are sealed. Item number 26-08, approve the minutes from February 3rd, 2026. Item number 26-09, resolution 2026-005, to apply for and accept grant funding related to Phase 2A of the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Interconnection Project. And then 26-10, Resolution 2026-006, to apply for and accept grant funding related to Phase 2B of the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Interconnect Project. And that's it.
Before we vote on this, I think the minutes look fine, other than on the non-public minutes from February 3rd. With the exception of voting to enter non-public, I was present for all the votes. It says I was not present. I was virtual but present. So if we could just update those minutes to reflect that I was actually attending the meeting, that would be lovely.
Right. Madam Clerk, you'll take care of that?
Yeah.
Oh, non-public, no, Jack.
It'd be Jack.
I'm sorry, I thought you said that one, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept that with the changes Ms. Spencer made.
All right.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept it as amended. Council Mills.
Yes.
Counsel Webb.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Chase.
Yes.
Counsel McEachern.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the chair's report. We have an appointment this evening. I move to appoint Janet Weatherby as an alternate member of the Heritage Commission for a term to expire March 31st, 2028.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. On the motion, Counsel Mills.
Yes.
Counsel Webb.
Yes.
Counsel Spencer.
Yes.
Counsel Chase.
Yes.
Counsel McEachern.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 6-0. All right. And also, so this evening, I received a message, and effective tomorrow, we have a resignation on the town council. Council Moget has resigned her position. So we will discuss it as a council, and the the March 3rd meeting, we will bring forward the next course of action. So, Mr. Fowler.
Good evening. I have a very short town administrator's report tonight, and then I'll hand this over to Chief Feole for a brief presentation on canine deployment. So, a couple of general items for town administrator's report. Finances, we're going to be working on bringing forward the CIP, 6-year CIP, will be presented to the planning board.
There you go, sorry about that. 6-year planning board will be presented tomorrow night, so I'll be there with Mark Fleischer, and we'll present to the planning board. We are also working towards getting all the department heads' fiscal 27 budgets in place, and we'll be reviewing those throughout the month of March, and with a delivery to the town council in April. So that will be kind of the next phase of where we're going to be working with staff over the next few weeks here. Talking about building and infrastructure, obviously Exit 4A, the B contract you've received or seen. Front page on the Union Leader to talk about that a deal has been struck to now install the rail trail tunnel under North High Street. I still do not have any specific details nor confirmation from New Hampshire DOT. I suspect that's going to be coming in the near future, but I would suspect that you can believe the media reports are true that there will be a new rail trail tunnel as opposed to an at-grade crossing or the spaghetti loop that had been the previous design. I haven't heard anything telling us that the project will be delayed unnecessarily as a result of that. So once I get some real information from New Hampshire DOT, I will present it to the board here, and we'll have that information available. On Abbott Court, if you've been by there, you've seen some land clearing activities, and there's some fencing that has been installed around the site. I think as the weather improves, there's going to be an expectation that the site's going to be fully mobilized. They're going to start their work to excavate for the footings and do some of the preliminary utility work, so that you will see a lot more activity going on there, I think, as each one of these days gets, longer and 40 degrees, not 12 degrees. There'll be more work on those sites. And then lastly, personnel, I just wanted to give a quick update on the fire chief selection process. The selection committee has done a preliminary review of the resumes that have been received. A questionnaire had been sent out to all of the candidates, and so the committee will be meeting very shortly to narrow down the candidates, and then there will be interviews amongst those candidates and the committee going forward. So as had been presented, that's either going to be in late February or into early March. And again, I'll keep everybody posted as far as where that process is moving forward. So that's all I have this evening for general information. I'd like to invite Chief George Feole up to provide a presentation on the canine deployment.
Get that slide deck going? You do. Perfect.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much. I'm happy to present an update on how we are progressing with our canine programs in Derry. As you know, about a year and a half ago, we became operational with our first canine unit, and about 8 months ago, our second patrol canine. And in between that, we had also, this past 2025, April, I believe it was, we began our Comfort Dog program with Canine Bear. So if you pay attention to your screen, I'll just go through some highlights of the programs as they've developed. Now, I included in your packet, I think, a more detailed explanation of all the activity. In the interest of brevity, I'll just stick to the slides. Happy to answer questions when I'm done. First, Officer Colin Kennedy in Canine Latios. He's a 3.5-year-old Belgian Malinois. He began working with the police department in March of '24. Colin and Latios are dual certified as a patrol canine team and a narcotics detection team. After successfully completing the 560-hour canine course at Boston Canine Academy, he graduated on July 5th, 2024. And then subsequent to that, on February 14th, 2025, they became certified narcotics detection team. Just a quick overview, Latios has been very active in the community from January 1st of this past year till December 31st. He was deployed in 26 total incidents. These included apprehensions, tracks, article searches, building searches, mutual aid requests, used as a force multiplier, and narcotic searches. Just quick highlights for Latios. February 22nd, domestic violence, felony assault. There was a bite involved in that particular apprehension. Of note, the individual that was arrested was attempting to arm himself with a knife. Had the dog not intervened, I'm sure that would have turned out very differently. That would have been a deadly force situation. So the use of the canine was a de-escalation tactic, as much as some people might think not. March 8th, 2025, vehicle pursuit and disobeying an officer. Canine track assisted in the search for a suspect who fled on foot following the foot pursuit. May 12th to 25, burglary and forced entry. We cleared the commercial property. The suspect did flee prior to our arrival. Now, when we're talking about commercial properties, it's very intensive to search a large building. The canine really shortens our time on scene for those types of incidents. DWI crash and felony arrest on August 8th. Area search, article search, tracked a fleeing individual for 300 yards through dense brush. Suspect was taken into custody. It was a successful track. Make note of that date. I'll talk about it again with the next canine. September 14th, felony narcotics search. The dog alerted on a vehicle. Search warrant was obtained, and we successfully found heroin and fentanyl in the vehicle. Indecent exposure and a barricaded suspect on December 15th of last year. Latios was used as a standby during the barricade. Suspect surrendered eventually, and the canine was prepared for deployment, though not used and deployed during that surrender. Next is Officer Andrew Kennedy, no relation to Officer Colin Kennedy, and his canine, Freddie. Freddie is a 2-year-old Belgian Malinois who began working with the Derry Police Department on April 30th of this past year. Andrew and Freddie are anticipated to be dual certified canine, and we're going to deviate a little bit. Instead of narcotics, we're going to go with the explosive detection certification for the second dog. After successfully completing 560 hours of the canine handler's course down in Boston, they graduated on July 1st, 2025. We anticipate in the fall or winter of 2026, we'll obtain that canine explosives EOD training certification. Very quickly, Freddie had been developing as a strong canine asset, deploying throughout town and after completing his basic training. Those deployments included apprehensions, article search, building search, mutual aid, force multiplier, and missing persons track. Quarter one was basically a training quarter for him. July 8th, we assisted mutual aid to Londonderry PD with an armed robbery. There were several canines involved besides ours. Canine teams become fatigued after searches for extended periods of time, so we relieved other canines and continued tracking. August 8th, DWI crash and felony. I told you to pay attention to that date on the last couple of slides because that was the same event that Latios was on. Just happens that the crash occurred during shift change when one dog was leaving and one dog was coming, so they both were involved. Freddie was deployed as an article search, where Latios was deployed as a track for the suspect. So that was a successful deployment. High-risk motor vehicle stop on September 7th. Perimeter security provided a deterrent presence while multiple occupants were detained for a knife-related threat. And then lastly, missing person, elderly person, on October 6th, search and rescue, and that was a successful location. We were able to track and successfully recover the elderly resident. Next is Senior Master Patrol Officer Aaron Sullivan and Comfort Dog Bear. Bear is a 2-year-old black lab. He began working with the Derry Police Department on April 5th last year. He's been certified since by the American Kennel Club. As a comfort dog, he passed his certifications for Canine Good Citizen, Community Canine, and Advanced Urban Canine Good Citizen. Since his arrival in April of '25, the Comfort Dog Bear has been a key community engagement resource for us. He helps strengthen trust and positive interactions between the police and the public while providing emotional support to victims, community members, and department personnel. Comfort Dog Bear was used extensively in the wellness realm. You may recall last year we suffered the loss of one of our longtime officers, SRO Brian Landry. During that period of grief and mourning, Bear was instrumental in providing wellness to all of our staff. Now, I just want to talk anecdotally about, Bear came down to the funeral home when we had the services for Brian. And he was able to walk around, I don't know how he does it, or how he did it. He walked around that room, found the persons that were struggling most, and they were so emotionally upset, they were crying and so forth. He walked up and sat down next to those people and sat with them. And that was amazing to watch and see. You can't put a price on that kind of an interaction, I don't believe. We use him for peer support. Excuse me. He assisted the Derry and the Hollis Police Department following traumatic critical incidents to mitigate stress. We use him for National Night Out and Derry Fest outreach. He's the primary ambassador for the community engagement, facilitating hundreds of positive interactions. School assistance, he visits regularly with the Derry schools and libraries to build a rapport with children. I happened to witness one of those interactions at the Derry Library. He walks into the room and within seconds, literally, 6 or 8 children are on the floor with the dog, engaging with the officer. You wouldn't have that interaction absent the dog being in the room, likely. And then for professional certifications, he's, as I mentioned earlier, Canine Good Citizen, Community Canine, November, and AKC Urban Canine in November. So to summarize, patrol units, Latios and Freddie, were both made possible with generous donations of separate grants from the Stanton Foundation. Now, we got about $104,000 total for those 2 grants to support the development of those 2 programs. Their deployments often involve criminal charges and the safe resolution of violent or high-risk incidents. We have found the mere presence of police canines has led to a successful de-escalation of tense and high-risk situations that may have previously resulted in higher levels of force application. These canines focus on apprehension, detection, and deterrence. Comfort Dog Bear, we also were fortunate to have generous donations from AT&T and Hero Pups. $7,000 were paid directly to Hero Pups for the purchase and training of Comfort Dog Bear by AT&T. His deployments, as I indicated earlier, involve emotional recovery, public education, strengthening the bond between citizens and law enforcement, etc. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Spencer.
I don't have any questions, but I am really pleased to hear that all 3 of our canines are having such an impact in the community, and great work.
Thank you. I would say, by and large, these programs are highly successful, and we're glad to continue them in the community.
Anyone else? No? Well, thank you, Chief, and again, glad it's a very successful program, and I guess at the end of the day, the most important thing is officer safety, and from the sounds of it, it's already done that.
Thank you.
If it was possible, I'd vote to give the dog a raise, but I think we could come up with some of the money for that.
I don't think they'd object.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Thank you, Chief.
Give him an extra bone.
Thank you.
A vest.
Biscuit.
Is that it for you, Mr. Fowler?
That's all I have on the town administrator's report tonight.
Okay. Moving on, new business. 26-11, Resolution 2026-004.
Come back.
To authorize the use of
I was wondering why you were leaving.
to authorize the use of opioid funds for police department equipment. Chief Feole?
Thank you. I've asked Captain John Breen to join me at the podium in case you have any questions that I can't answer. He will certainly be able to help us out. I think we have another slide deck there. Briefly from the staff report, we have available to us $337,000 as of December 31st in opioid trust settlement funds that we already have. I seek to spend some of that this evening, and I seek your authorization to spend $45,900 to obtain one TrueNarc handheld detection device. And I'll go through the slides. This device is used for direct remediation. The National Opioid Settlement Funds are designed and designated for programs that address the misuse and abuse of opioid products and mitigate the effects of the crisis. Evidence-based strategies, this acquisition directly supports overdose prevention and supply interdiction. There won't be any taxpayer impact since all of the requested funds are coming from the Opioid Settlement Fund. The TrueNarc Delta is the modern evolution of the legacy model specifically designed for the fentanyl era. It now identifies over 1,200 substances, including the latest nitazines or analogs, xylazine. And I think some of our counselors might be familiar with that. It's a veterinary tranquilizer, sedative. And that's now used by drug dealers to cut and dilute fentanyl and heroin, and carfentanil. Optimized for low concentration mixtures, it identifies fentanyl even when it makes up only 1% of the sample. As a faster triage, it's point and shoot, and we get a result in 60 seconds or less. So one of the nice things about this particular device is that there's no contact. We don't need to open the packages that the narcotics are contained within. If it's glass or if it's plastic, we just analyze straight through that container. We don't have to risk airborne aerosolizing the product and can risk contamination for our officers. Presumptive certainty, the Raman spectroscopy is a Category A analytic technique, and that's beyond me, but that's the scientific term. Automated record keeping, it generates a tamper-proof PDF report with date, time stamps, and GPS coordinates for wherever we are making that particular reading. By identifying non-controlled substances on scene, we reduce the volume of negative samples that we need to send to the state lab so we really make things more efficient for both the state and us. It comes with a 5-year warranty, and more importantly, it comes with training for up to 12 of our officers. As I said, the cost of that device is $45,900, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that last slide, it just modernizes stuff for us and enhances our investigation. It makes it more efficient. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Spencer.
Thank you. Yes, I'm familiar with xylazine. It's mostly in horses, so I don't really deal with it, but yes, it's a problem. Does this have the ability to, like if new things come out, like I was just listening to something the other day that was talking about that dexmedetomidine, which is another drug that we use very frequently, and neither xylazine nor dexmedetomidine are controlled, so there's that too, although there's a bill. But with dexmedetomidine isn't a huge concern yet and not in the human side. Like if new drugs are coming out, does this have the ability to like be upgraded to get those, take
Yes.
care of those drugs down the road?
Yes, it can be upgraded via the internet.
Perfect. Okay.
Imagine a Wi-Fi connection to our network.
Part of the 5-year plan includes updates as they come out from the company, which this technology has been around for a very long time. I'm sure Councilor Webb is aware. The machines just used to be very, very large. They weren't handheld. But every year they keep adding more and more identifiable narcotics and even non-narcotics to the database.
Perfect. Thank you.
Council Webb.
Does it use many consumables or?
I'm not sure the question again.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
What do you mean?
It doesn't involve cassettes or anything like that. It's strictly a Spectrum.
So, yeah, how it works is it uses a laser light to basically, that Raman spectrometry is detecting the vibrational frequencies of the molecules, and then it comes up with a database. Again, well beyond me. So there is additional attachments you can get to get super low dose. The way you scan it is, if it comes up as a non-detectable, you can do up to 3 scans. The test kits we use now are NARC-2 test kits, which you have to take a physical sample, put it in a plastic container, break glass ampules.
Yeah.
So this has an attachment that would work similar to that, but the detection limits on it make that very unique that you would have to use that.
Anyone else? Councilor Chase.
So I understand that it sees through plastic and glass and all that. What can you do if it is a non-opaque container that the suspected narcotics are in?
Yeah, you would have to, it can only detect it through the clear containers, so we'd either have to move it to a clear container or determine that based on the substance, we'd have to make that determination that we're not going to physically handle it to test it. These are presumptive tests. They used to establish probable cause. Anything that we would be bringing further in the judicial system, these products would still have to go to the state lab for further testing. So that would just be a determination we'd have to make for the safety of our officers.
What else?
All right. Happy to make a motion if there are no other questions. Mr. Chairman, I'll read Resolution 2026-004 to authorize the use of opioid settlement funds for police equipment. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Town Charter establishes the Town Council as the governing body, legislative body of the town, whereas the town is the original plaintiff in the national opioid litigation which seeks to recover funds to address the impacts of opioid crisis in Derry, and whereas the Town Council under Resolution 2021-050 established the Opioid Trust Fund as a repository for the settlement funds received, and whereas one of the segments of the town's evolving strategy to address these impacts is to enhance the emergency services capabilities responding to the opioid crisis, and whereas the town has received settlement funds adequate to pay for this equipment. Now, therefore, be resolved in council that the council hereby authorizes the town administrator to expend $45,900 from the opioid trust fund to purchase a TrueNarc handheld drug detection device. Resolution shall take effect immediately upon passage, adopted February 17, 2026.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Councilor Mills.
Yes.
Councilor Webb.
Yes.
Councilor Spencer.
Yes.
Councilor Chase.
Yes, absolutely.
Cochran.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Captain, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Councilors, comments, liaisons. Councilor Spencer.
Thank you. For those that didn't join the earlier meeting, just a reminder that the Legislative Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the small room off the back of this room. Happy Lunar New Year to everybody. And lastly, we are holding our annual rabies clinic. It can be annual now. We've had it several years. It'll be Saturday, April 4th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. downstairs here. Yeah, that's all I got.
Councilor Chase.
The planning board is currently working on looking at the downtowns, especially the TBOD and the CBD district, to fall in line with potential enhancements with the new Abbott Court project going in. Sunday afternoon, we did a site walk of the entire downtown area, looking at issues, taking measurements, and seeing what would best fit with some new projects that are coming down the pipeline, what can be done to make it easier and enhance the downtown. And we'll be holding our third workshop tomorrow night, and hopefully something will be coming before the council shortly.
All right. Councilor Mills, you have anything?
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
So for those last meeting, we mentioned the human trafficking bills. So there's 2 human trafficking bills that made it through the committee, and they're going to be voted on this Thursday on the House floor, and that's House Bill 1458 and House Bill 1469. So we're hoping for a good outcome for both of those bills, and March 3rd, we'll update you how that goes. So, is there a motion? You have any?
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
All right.
as requested.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned.